Hi everybody, we are going to do some reading now, and you have been given a text. It's a more conventional text, so it's an extract from a book that's a book for children. It's all about stories about animals and things like that, and you may recognise some of the characters. So what I want you to do is read the texts, underline some bits. There might be some words that you're not sure of. Underline them so you know where they are. Go into Google, have a look at a dictionary app. I suggest if you're using a tablet device, you can get like an Oxford Dictionary app. Look it up. What does it mean? Write it down in a magpie book. So if you've done that, we are going to look through and see what we're doing. So the reading areas that we're going to cover. Remember, we're doing our explain. So we're going to look at the impacts of word choice, why the author has chosen to use certain words. And as we said, there are no, or very few accidents. Authors write things for a reason, and we looked at illustrators as well, and they do things for a purpose. Is there an impact of organisational structures? Remember, that's things like language features. It's things like headings or titles, subheadings, paragraphs, those sorts of things. We look at how issues are dealt with differently by different authors, or the same, or different issues are dealt with by the same author. Similarities and differences between texts, how the author makes the reader feel, and different writing techniques. So, as I've said, make sure you've read the first page of Jenny Wren Gives Peter Rabbit an Idea, and we have 3 sets of questions that I will put up for you in a PDF. And what I want you to do is to have a look at the questions. I'm going to go through some of them. So for our one chili, we have, what impression do you have of Reddy Fox? So my suggestion for this question is to go through and find where you see Reddy Fox. Where do you read about Reddy Fox, and what is he doing? So your impression is what you think of him. And then I want you to list all of the words or phrases that make you think this. So if you think he's a nice character, just make a list of all of the things that the author uses to make you think that. It might be the way that he acts. He might do something nice. He might say something nice. He might be acting in a nice way. What I want you to do for this question here, it says the author says Peter, safe inside that hole, didn't have a word to say, or if he did, he didn't have the breath enough to say it. Why do you think that the author chose to describe Peter as out of breath? So what is the author trying to tell us that he's out of breath? What has just happened? Can you think of a time when you were out of breath? If you read it, if you find that quote in the text, because we know it's in the text, because it has quotation marks, read that paragraph, read the sentences around it. What is happening? Why is he out of breath? And for our final question here, how might Peter and Reddy's interaction influence the story moving forward? So Peter and Reddy there's an interaction between them, so they meet each other and something happens. How is what happens going to affect the story in the future? Now, you might have to use some sensible guessing skills here in order to predict what might happen. And think about other stories that you may have read, films you may have seen where similar things have happened. How might they have ended? So our next chili, we've got Peter plunged frantically through the root-bound entrance to that hole. In the above quote, why might the author have used the phrase plunged frantically? So he's used this plunged frantically for a reason. The first thing I would do is I would go in and I would have a think about what does plunged frantically mean. Now, what skills can you use? Number one, you could probably go and get a dictionary. Number two, you could read the sentence around it. He plunged frantically through the root-bound entrance to the hole. So what's happening? What's he doing? Thinking about what plunged frantically means. And why has he chosen to use that? What do those... So you've got the meaning of those. What's happening in the situation? We've got, what impression does the phrase snarled Reddy Fox give us of Reddy? So the author is saying he is telling us how Reddy Fox is talking. So why has he chosen to make Reddy Fox snarl? What does snarl mean? What sorts of animals might snarl and when might they snarl? Why has the author chosen to start the story with Peter almost getting caught by Reddy? So he's almost been caught and he's now safe and Reddy's just walked off. Why do you think that? Why do you think that happens? Why didn't he just start just before? Why didn't he start in the morning when he woke up? Because it's got him hiding scared in the hole. Why do you think they chose to start the story like that? And it might have something to do with how the story progresses. They might be giving you some clues. And finally, we have our three chilies here. So the author portrays I keep calling him Freddy. It's not Freddy. It's Reddy. Peter and Reddy differently. Number one, how does he do it? How does he make sure that both characters are different? And why does he do that? So he describes them very differently. What real-world qualities do the animals have that mean that they might fit the character role well? I've left some words out of that. Let me go over that. What real-world qualities do the animals have that, mean that they might fit the character role well? So why do you think that Peter is a rabbit and Reddy is the fox? What real-world qualities do those animals have that might make them fit their role in the story? Normally the roles in the story are either the people that help, it might be the good guy, it might be the bad guy. And finally, how might the fact that old Chuck built the hole long ago affect the story? How might the fact that old Chuck built the hole long ago affect the story? So think about that. Why have they told us that? They could have just left that out. How is that going to affect the story? Okay, answer those questions. I'm going to go through and I'm going to give the answers for our one chili. So, our first question, what impression do you get of Reddy Fox? Think about it. Is it a good character? Is it a bad character? Well, if we think about it, we're using things like he snarls when he talks, and that's that noise that's almost like that growling that hungry dogs might make. And he's talking about catching you, like, I will catch you someday. It says he was too shrewd to waste time. Shrewd's almost like an evil clever. After trying to make Peter feel uncomfortable, so he's trying to make Peter feel uncomfortable. Is that quite a nice thing? And it says, but this morning he nearly caught me. So we know he's trying to catch Peter. He's snarling, which is that noise that hungry dogs might make. And he doesn't really want to waste any time. He's trying to make people feel uncomfortable. So he's probably not a very nice character. You might think he's quite nasty, he's quite bad. Yeah, and there are the reasons. Or you might have listed some more. But there are just some examples that you might use. So this is the author says, Peter, safe inside that hole. Why do you think that the author chose to describe Peter as out of breath? Think about a time that you were out of breath. Think about what's happening. He's being chased by a fox. He's a rabbit. He wants to get eaten. He's probably incredibly scared. What happens when you get scared? You lose your breath. So instead of saying Peter was really scared, he said he was out of breath, he can't really think properly, because he might have been rushing, because he was in danger. So that's why he's trying to imply that Peter is scared or in danger, and he might also be implying that he's sort of acting out of impulse without thinking. Finally, how might Peter and Reddy's interaction influence the story moving forward? The fox might try to get him, I would say, because that's normally the sort of cat and mouse games. There's like a little bit like Tom and Jerry. The bad guy tries to get the good guy and the good guy gets away, or the good guy tries to get the bad guy and actually captures him. So the fox, I thought the fox might keep trying to get him, and that's what the story's about. The fox is always trying, because he might get hungry. So every time he doesn't get the rabbit, he gets a little bit hungrier. So he might have to try to be a little bit more cunning. I thought maybe Peter Rabbit might get his own back, because he's just been scared. So he might team up with his friends or the other rabbits and get his own back on the fox. I also thought that the fox might actually get him. So the fox might capture him, he might wait, he might set a trap. Peter goes into the trap, gets caught, and then he gets taken back to the fox's den. The foxes live in dens? Sets? I know badgers live in sets. Here's a side note, if you can find out where a fox lives, what that's called, I'd be really interested here. So it might be taken back to where the fox lives. I'm ready to eat him. It doesn't matter what actually happens, it matters what clues have we got. Well done. So looking back at our 2 chilies, so we've got our first question. Why might the author have chosen the phrase plunge frantically? Think about it. It implies panic or rushing. If someone's doing something frantically, they're normally scared. And the word plunged is almost like you might use it like plunge the dagger. It's almost like to stab something, or you might plunge into a pool of water. It's to go in really fast. So it's doing something really fast and frantically without really thinking. So it's telling us that maybe Peter was acting out of impulse, like he was really scared, he was panicky. He was in danger, almost. What impression do we get? We get the impression that Snarled, he's probably not nice, he probably wants to eat Peter because he's quite happy. When we use like snarl, it's normally quite a nasty or angry verb to use. And our final question is, why has the author chosen to start the story with Peter almost getting caught? Maybe that's what the story is about. And actually, to start our stories, and this is a good technique you can use, we called them ing openers for our narratives. It's good to start in the middle of some action. It draws your reader right in straight away to what's happening. They buy into the story, they've got a bit of action, and they're caught. We've got their attention now, so it's a really good way to start the story. It probably plays into the story, and it gives us some clues. Sometimes we call this foreshadowing. It foreshadows the events that might come, so it's almost giving us a little hint of what's going to come. And finally, our 3 chilies. So the first one portrays the 2 characters differently. How does he do this? So one of the characters he portrays as being quite scared, they're hiding, whereas the other one, he portrays them as scary. So we've got the scarer and the scary. One is chasing one, or has just chased, and one is hiding, or has just been chased. One is quite scared and quite shy because he's hiding away, and the other one is quite confident. And why would you do this? Now, there is a technique that you see in a lot of writing, and we covered it a little bit when we looked at our characters. It's called juxtaposition. It's where you put 2 opposites next to each other to emphasise a point. So lots of the times you see in films, the 2 characters are the complete opposite. It might be their personality, it might be their looks. That's a really good way to almost build difference within your characters, make it really, really obvious, and it makes the characters really easy to identify. So it emphasises their differences. So if one's chasing, the other one's being chased. If one's quite scary, the other one might be shy and timid. So we're emphasising their differences to make it really clear, and we're attaching qualities to them that everybody knows as good and bad. And it makes us as readers more easily relate to them, and we buy into the story. When a bad person is acting bad, it's good, it's clear, and we can buy into that. But when a bad person maybe has some nice qualities, then we get a bit uneasy as readers. Some real world qualities the animals might have. So rabbits are prey to foxes. Foxes in the real life eat them, like rabbits are herbivores. Foxes carnivores. Rabbits are generally quite quick, quite agile. They're herbivores, so they might not hurt other animals that might see them as quite innocent, and because of that we might think of them as quite clever if they're quite quick and agile. They just hop around and eat grass. It's quite innocent. They haven't done anything bad. It makes quite a good character for a good character. Good personality for our characters to have. Whereas foxes, they eat other animals and they have to hunt, and to do that they have to kill in order to survive. It's a natural part of being a fox, but in the sense of a story, going around killing, it's quite a bad thing. It's quite sneaky, they're very quiet, and they have quite sharp teeth, and we see them as pests. They make quite a good bad character. How might the fact that Oldchuck built the hole long ago? Maybe, I was thinking maybe he's built others. He's built other shelters, and maybe they can find other shelters. Maybe because it was built long ago, when they go into the shelter they might find something that's very old. Maybe because it was quite old, and a lot of the time in stories we have old characters that are quite wise and quite clever, so maybe some old Chuck has invented or designed something that's going to help progress the story. It's going to help Peter Rabbit out. Maybe he might think back to a story that old Chuck has told him, and it's going to help him in future situations. So well done with those questions. Hopefully you've all done really well. And they're very quite difficult questions to grasp, some of them. Some of them are quite without a lot of context and without a lot of experience. They're quite hard to understand how to answer these questions. But remember, maximum 3 marks in a paper. So it's really good that you can do this. But please take some of these techniques, put them in your Magpie book, use them in your writing. It's when you start to use all these extra techniques that your writing really starts to stand out, and you start to, instead of just writing something, you're starting to be really clever and really crafting good characters and crafting good storylines and plots.